Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, guys? In this episode, which is our Student-Athlete Informational, we've gathered sound bites from our first season of Triple Threat Podcast. In our efforts to continue to bring you quality information, we've made a collage of important information from 10 of our guests. Those topics will include a collegiate coach, topics from a community organizer. Everybody needs an important role model. Nutritionist, food and nutrition is very important for athletes. We also touch base on asthma and the complications with sports, law enforcement, locally, nationally. Sex life was very important to teenage athletes, kids. NCAA rules and regulations, which every student athlete would need. And then sports agency, information to collegiate athletes once they get past their senior year in college. So wealth of information that we have here to present to families and student athletes. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get into the interview. In our first episode, I wanted to bring it home, something that's tie in the Low Country. And Earl Grant, being a player from Stall, being a local high school student, and then turned to a collegiate athlete, had major gains and success coming from this area. He had a 58% winning percentage at the college. And now he's at Boston College, coaching and teaching those young men great things out there. But to see a low country guy perform at that level, I think is very, very important. This episode really proved how important the grind is, how important staying after what you want, working hard, and then enjoying the fruits of your labor. So I call this episode just being ready when opportunity comes. All those attributes, you got, time, truth, conviction, toughness, all things you learn. And now we're here at the College of Charleston. How do you feel all those things you learn in the application with your coaching now? What are the results from all the things you implemented into your team, and how do you think those things has turned out into things you've learned teaching your players, staff, and so forth?
Well, I mean, I think that it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint, with the conglomerate of all of what we just talked about, the time, the commitment, all that stuff like that. I mean, all of that together. I think it's a blueprint for success. It's a blueprint for success. Now, we still got work to do here. I think we've made some progress in the time over the last 4 or 5 years. We've made some progress, but I think we still got work to do. There's still some things that hadn't been accomplished that we're still striving for to kind of wake us up every day and get us excited. But I think out of all those experiences, you're talking about 15 years of assistant coach before coming here, all those experiences I draw on here. Like, I know for sure that you're going to be held responsible for your actions. So going to class, treating people right, being on time, giving good effort, you're going to be held accountable. I also know that I don't really enjoy coaching certain types of kids.
It's interesting.
Like if you don't love being in the gym and
I work harder. It makes me work harder.
And you don't work hard, me and you have problems. Like
Right.
I don't enjoy you as much, now.
Right.
There's a certain type of kid I like to coach. I know that. And it's interesting because with my sons, I told my wife, I said, I wanted my sons would be somebody I like to coach. They got to get tougher right now. And I'm looking at them like, you got to get tougher, man. So I think that, but I also realized, Jamel, that through basketball, the life lessons that you learn, like anything possible from the College of Charleston, man. Basketball is a vehicle to get you to where you're trying to go. And while you in that vehicle, moving towards where you're trying to go, maybe leave some footprints in the sand, doing some special things, whether it be get to the tournament or big time wins that you have, like, or relationships that you develop in the city, on campus, with your teammates, or just people around this area. But like those guys have done well. We got Dick Harris is in law school, Evan Belly's in medical school, Jarrell with the Utah Jazz, Joe Cheeley with the Charlotte Hornets,
Wow.
Cam Johnson with the San Antonio Spurs. Marquise Pointer got his photography company here doing wedding plannings and different things he's doing. Grant Rilla is on the verge of being drafted. Here's the trick, though. All them kids I just mentioned, they got a degree.
That's right.
You got something to stand on. So, we try to play basketball, but we try to become a better man, and we try to position ourselves to have a bright future, by getting an education and building relationships that'll help you 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
In this episode with Dallas Wilson, I kind of called him the reason why Day Foundation and Jamel President existed. He broke the mold when it comes to teaching student athletes from this area how to get to from high school to the college arena. And I didn't want to not bring importance of the community organization, how important community involvement is to families and student athletes when they lack the information that they need. Talking about sacrifices, the things that he did for a whole community where he could have just been selfish and did for his own family. So we appreciate the knowledge and understanding and the patience that you gave us in helping us succeed our goals. Going back into your vision, can you explain the purpose of your vision? Like, why was your vision implemented so heavily and so effectively? Because what was that purpose behind everything?
Well, again, growing up in the streets, you build a tenacity, man, as an area of being tenacious in whatever it is that you're looking at. A lot of times people throw roadblocks. Roadblocks are just opportunities. They're not really things that like obstacles that should stop you from doing. What caused me to do that is, once again, I said this as calmly as I could. What God did for me is allow me to escape the idea of being dead at 21, being destroyed, not allowing myself to reach my full potential. Getting away allowed me to take what it was that I learned and grow as I was teaching others, and to gather all of the information necessary for me to reach the potential that the Lord had designed for me. And one of the things that we wanted to do was be a conduit, not to be the person that had all of the answers. I'm not the sole repository of knowledge, but I wanted to be a conduit. I wanted to have what I've learned from my experiences athletically and academically to be transferred to people's hearts that needed those same experiences. And the first thing that we had to do when we got here was to build trust in this community so that people could get an understanding that we were not here to ravish this community. We were not here to do things in this community that negative people would do, but to do them in such a way that people would recognize it, that we had a plan, and we had a legitimate plan to see people become successful. So the first thing I think that we did was very simply move to the east side. You know, it was a simple thing. And so in 1980, I think it was 84, 85, we started our trek to move here, to move downtown, to be in a place where people could watch us walk in and out of a door every single day. We could talk to people and put our arms around them. We didn't try to tell them anything, just to let them know when they asked that we were starting a church and the church was going to do this, and these are the effective changes that we were going to try to make in our area. And those things happened. They were very, very important. And let me give you again a thought. Success to us is finding the will of God for your life. That's success. I see you as being, and I'll come back to our topic. I see you as being successful. And I see you as being successful because you had the ability to listen, the ability to hear, and the ability to trust. You know, when we said something, you listened to. You didn't say, well, Brother Dallas, I don't want to do that. Not one time. I can say to this audience that listens to you every day, not one time did you ever say anything back to me that was negative. Not one time. And you stayed around me very close. You listened very carefully. You always had the ball game. The ball game, we couldn't give you that. We couldn't do anything with that. But we could put that ball game in a different sphere of influence. And that was very, very important. And we had to do that academically. I wanted to say that because it's important.
In this episode with Ben Betts, modeling. Modeling is very important. And I think every kid's need an icon or someone to observe on how to get things done. Coach Betts was that modeling icon for me on a collegiate level. We talked, we bonded, and the things we talk about and things that he helped me to figure out made me more confident in my adversaries and different approaches, things that was going on in school. I had someone to talk to, have someone to lean on. So having a role model, have someone that you can talk to, bounce back ideas off of is very important. So we thank you, Coach Betts, for being that wealth of knowledge and being that model for young Black student athletes. You know, I know that, it said, in your bio that y'all played in the Division III, playoffs, back in Roanoke. Talk about that because, I don't think you played professionally or played after school. What triggered the movement into coaching? Having a mastered in physical education, right? What triggered into coaching? Did you always want to be a coach? Because as I talk to different coaches, it seemed like things trigger that versus this is what I wanted to be, this is where I wanted to go. What was the trigger?
Yep. Probably when I went to college, my whole plan was to get a teacher's degree. I did my undergrad in physical education. So my plan was, my mom was a school teacher for years, taught so many kids in the neighborhood and but yet, so early on through my stages of, getting into high school and going to college, the education side was extremely important. It was installed in me early, but my plan was to go get a job, teach high school, and probably get into high school coaching. So my senior year, a really close friend of mine who I'm close with now, his name is Adam Pryor. He really got involved in the coaching side through, at the time, really the main way that you got into coaching was through a graduate assistantship. For sure. That was the avenue. It didn't have director of basketball operations, didn't have player development. So that graduate assistantship was the way you got involved. And so, he started off, and that kind of really, triggered my mindset of, that's something I really want to do or want to try to, get involved with. But also, the academics was important enough to me too. Once I got a feel about the graduate assistantship, I knew that was an avenue for me to continue my education and get a graduate degree. But yet, still the whole concept of getting into coaching. I know he had went to Millersville University and he went to University of Maryland for a few years. I went up there and worked at camp with Gary Williams. He was the head coach. My buddy Adam was there on staff and got a chance to see it from a whole new level.
Right.
You're talking about an ACC school and how it kind of operates, but got a chance to work camp. And so that kind of even piqued my interest more. So, man, my senior year, my college coach, his name is Paige Moyer, or had two college coaches, Paige Moyer and Ed Green. Coach Moyer was close with, he had worked at another school with someone who was an assistant at South Carolina State. South Carolina State had a graduate assistant position open. Coach Cy Alexander, who was the first coach I worked for, and that's how I got into the coaching for the graduate assistantship.
In today's Time Out message, we got Chucky Robinson.
You have to have a balance of playing basketball and in the books. And like you said before, I didn't make my scores, so I had a decision to make. I had to either go to prep school, like you said, I think it was Maine Institute, or I can go to a junior college. And I chose the junior college because at that time we wasn't financially equipped to pay for tuition going to Maine Institute where I came from. So I said the best route for me so I can put my family at ease is getting a scholarship. And I got a scholarship at Howard Junior College, and it turned my life around, especially my mom and my family then wouldn't have a burden of having to pay out of pocket. So I took that in consideration to take that scholarship. I also had some other scholarships to play junior college ball, but for me, I wanted to get away from home and get in a different environment so I can focus on myself, get to know who I am at the time, because I was young. Everybody go through a lot of spurs, so I want to just know who I am, being away from home, being away from my environment that I grew up in, and get to figure out things on my own. I didn't want to lean on anybody else.
Now let's get back to the interview. In this episode with Janet Carter, we met a long time ago doing some Day Foundation, doing some programs with MUSC. It's called the Options Program. I always admired the way she delivered her information when she had speaking engagements, or whenever she was talking to a group of people. So I always kept her involved in whatever we do when it comes to delivering nutritional information. It's very important that athletes adhere to the information when it comes to nutrition. Your body, your muscles, your mind, everything goes off nutrition. And it's just like a car. A car cannot move without gas. It's 93, 87, what have you, 89, what have you. You got to have good gas in your car, and you got to have good fuel in your body in order to perform.
Saturated fat is mostly from animal sources of food. So if we're thinking about high-fat dairy, high-fat meats like ground beef, cheese, things like that. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be avoided, because obviously there's some nutritional value from those foods. But we have to be aware that it's better to choose healthier versions of animal sources, because that is a big source of protein for most people is animal foods, right? So, and again, just going back to the protein thing, it is important to meet your base needs of protein. You don't want to be deficient in protein. So we do need to have some, right? So, so it's important to choose those healthier options, like chicken breast more often than like fried chicken or like a hamburger or like steak, you know what I mean? So, or a,
well, just for Clarence, you said chicken breast, but then you said not fried chicken. Is it cool to eat fried chicken breast?
Good question. So not really. So honestly, anything that is deep fried, and I'm not talking about like pan seared on the top of the stove. I'm talking like deep fried.
Good point.
Anything that is deep fried is pretty much at the top of the list of unhealthy foods, even if it started out healthy. Like if it's, say, like a fried vegetable, for instance, like fried
Right.
okra,
Right.
that is really, really healthy by itself, like steamed or sauteed. But then when you deep fry it, it turns it into a pretty unhealthy food. So that's a good question, because you're right. I think a lot of times when people are, say they're out and about and they have to grab some food, their mind, if they're trying to do healthier options, goes to chicken. But
Right.
then oftentimes there's just fried chicken options at a lot of these fast food restaurants. And so maybe not realizing that that's not as healthy of a choice as, if there is a grilled chicken option, or if there's some other type of choice that's available.
Right.
I know it's tough sometimes when we eat out to
Right.
find things that are decent. So if I had unlimited resources, it would be wonderful to have a program that would be in the community that would be easily accessible to students and student athletes, and really any kid, to gain the knowledge that they would need for, wellness, but also to provide not just information, like not just standing in front of them and teaching them, but providing them with the tools like
Exactly.
cooking skills, or taking them to a grocery store and shopping around with them, or actually giving them healthy food. I feel like, the Charleston and greater Charleston area in a lot of South Carolina is very much, poverty stricken, and it's very difficult for families to eat healthy because of that, and these food deserts that are around. And so I would really want to incorporate actual healthy food being given to people with the education piece. That would be something that would be a dream come true. And I know there are some programs that, do their best along those lines, but unfortunately it's hard to implement those types of things because of funding issues and
For sure.
and other, barriers.
In my episode with Coach Bobby Crimmins, I wanted to touch base on the transition and the evolution of the game from when he played until now. Being a great coach and a great motivator that he was also Coach of the Year in 1990, and also had a great stint in Georgia Tech, Appalachian State, and then ended at the College of Charleston. But having that wealth of knowledge and going through those times where there wasn't AAU programs, there wasn't a lot of information as far as nutrition and agencies and the whole nine of information that's out there for athletes now, that wasn't in their time. He didn't have that information. So we want to talk about the evolution and the transition of the sport and how it is effective now. So I appreciate Coach for coming on and giving us that information that can help us proceed. I see you played 1 year after your collegiate career, and then you started, coaching. What was that time experience like? When you played, did you realize this wasn't for you, or did you have a bad experience? What got you into coaching after you spent that year of professionally playing?
Well, my number one goal was to play professionally.
Like all of us, right?
Yeah, that was my number one goal. I didn't want to coach. And at the time I came out, the ABA was in existence. And I was going to try out for the Atlanta Hawks. I had to try out with the Hawks. But then the ABA came into existence, and there was a friend who, the general manager of the Hawks, he knew about me, and then he became the general manager of the Pittsburgh Condors. So he said, you're now going to try out for the Condors in the ABA. And then when I had a chance to make the team, the rookie of the year that year for the Condors was Mike Malloy from Davidson. But then the Carolina Cougars had been in existence 2 years they were out of Charlotte, Raleigh, and Raleigh, Charlotte, and I guess Durham.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted ACC players to play for them. in that franchise. So I got shifted over to the Carolina Cougars. And I was the last guy cut from the Cougars. And then I got bounced around. And then I had some offers to go overseas. And I got a phone call from a coach in Pittsburgh who had met me at a Davidson basketball camp. And he was the head coach of an NAIA school. And he wanted the young coach to coach the freshman team. And he just thought about me.
Right.
He loved the way I played, and he called me up. And it was perfect timing because I was all over the place. I was in South America. I was here. I was there. And I could have stayed with it. I would have wound up overseas. I probably would have gotten there to try out for the ABA or the NBA, but I knew my time was running out. And I was a little tired of everything.
Right.
You know, they say once you get into the NBA, you become a piece of meat. And a lot of that is true.
Right.
And so so when this coach asked me, I said, I'll do it. And I drove from Columbia to Pittsburgh, and I coached the freshman team at Point Park College in Pittsburgh. And then Coach McGuire called me. And Coach said, look, you like coaching? I said, yes, I do. He said, well, come on back and work for me. So I went back to Columbia and started working for Coach McGuire.
In our episode with Dr. Michael Bowman, we look at as athletes and people, we always look at the outer body, the physical instruments that a player or a student may have. But we also know that the most important part of our body is our mental and our, inner focus, things that make our body work. And one of the diseases that's really targeting student athletes is asthma. Asthma can be very, very, very detrimental if you're not well informed of your disease. And in our conversation, we focus on the how, the why, the when, and ways to prevent and treat asthma. So again, it's very important information that if you have this disease, what to do, how to treat it, and what are the resources available to you. And considering COVID, and I don't know a whole about the complications. I know it's, in your chest area, what have you, but let's add that on top of asthma, right? And I don't know how well you deal with athletes, but let's take athletes out the picture right now and talk about COVID and asthma. What were some issues you've seen, this past year, and what are some resources that, families or people that suffer from asthma can go to right now?
When people die of COVID, they either die of pneumonia or total body circulatory failure. But lung disease is a major part of that. And one of they always talk about pre-existing comorbidities or conditions that make the outcomes worse. And lung disease is usually one of those. But surprisingly, asthma has not been nearly as high on that list as COPD or emphysema. And in some areas, cigarette smoking is viewed as a major bad outcome predictor. So what I have told people, and I've written some stuff for pediatricians around the state to help them dealing with their families where asthma is in the children. The most important thing is to keep your asthma under control, because if it is under control, then you're less likely to need prednisone. You're less likely to have major lung symptoms if you do catch COVID. There's now some feeling that asthma medicines, the inhaled steroid medicines that people take if they have moderately severe asthma, that may actually be protective, because it turns out that apparently those medicines will kind of turn down the places on cells where the COVID virus attaches. So actually, It may be that using some asthma medicines may help people when they're first infected. But you're very definitely right that lung disease is a major problem and a risk. So one thing that families know when they have asthma, they know signs of respiratory distress. Kids know something's wrong. I'm having a flare up. And so they may be able to tell their parents sooner that they've got something bad going on compared to other kids who don't have any experience with lung problems.
And this time our session, we have Melvin Watson.
I saw something totally different, like a game changer. And I was like, man, I ain't never seen anything like this before. And this guy can move like a guard. He was just quick. And so now you start second guess if you made the right decision coming up here. But being a competitor that we are, and coming from our background, playing on from part to part, our community teaches us, hey man, we ain't scared of nobody.
Right.
So we lace up, we gonna do what we gonna do. And you know, history took its course. I mean, at that time, I got adjusted. I started playing better. They made me up my game. And like you said, it was a different type of talent. Made you play different, made you a smarter ball player.
Right.
As good as we were, we still had to work on our IQ because we still didn't know how to really play the game yet.
I agree.
So I think a lot of kids don't understand that part of it. Yeah, you can go out on the park and play one-on-one and just play, but when I put you in the system and you have to think and you have to read and all that stuff comes in play, a lot of kids struggle.
Right.
So
right.
For me, that's where my growth came at going to prep school.
Now let's get back to the interview. In my conversation with Deputy Eric Watson, as stated in our conversation, we have to grow and develop and create these safe spaces in our hearts and minds. Coming from City of Charleston locally, of course, is a national, a worldly situation that we all have to encounter and we all have to deal with. We focused on the conversation we really have is the perception we really had. It's the perception of law enforcement and how we react to them. It's very important to address those things that you don't know and you don't understand. So I wanted to take that time and give Deputy Watson a voice and a chance to explain what they're thinking, things they're going through, so we can better understand those approaches and how to deal with things when we encounter them. So I think that's very important, law enforcement rules and regulations, not just for student athletes, but people in general. What do you say the overall involvement community-wise of law enforcement? Like, what's the connection? And I want the community to understand, because I know it's protect and serve, but you personally, what's your overall commitment to the community?
My overall commitment to the community is bring awareness to a system that obviously is not perfect, broken. But in order for you to have an immediate impact on your community, you have to be willing to be a part of the system.
Yes, sir.
Understand how it works. Things that you can identify that need to be fixed, fix it. Good to criticize when you stand on a wing, but when it's time to perform on the stage, you can't perform. Sure. So my point here is that instead of criticizing or being in my position where I'm criticized on a daily basis by my own folks that work for me. The community criticized me when I was chief deputy with the sheriff's office because of things that not happening right in their life. But if you really want to have an impact, if you really want to change happening in your community, educate yourself about government.
Yes. Yeah.
How it works. And also hold your elected officials accountable. for not leading. You know, you elect them in office. You are their boss, so hold them accountable. So that's my goal, Mel, is to have an immediate impact, a meaningful impact on our community. Only way I can do that is vote in it, vote in what we do in public safety, through education, allow our kids, our youth. I think that's where it starts at, our youth, to enter into a system. Now they can branch off into doing other things within the government.
You're in law enforcement. What are some conversations you dealing with your past and understanding how you felt, and now you don't feel that way because you're in law enforcement and you got a black son? What are some conversations that you have with him, and how do you paint that picture to him? I mean,
right.
What do you say?
You know, Eric and I do have many conversations about that. And what I reassure my son is that the vast majority of the officers out there they're human beings, just like he is. They make mistakes. With that said, you still have that small percentage that will cross that line. That is a fact. That is a reality. That is why you have this many issues now within our country, because you have a small fragment within any organization that will cross the line, that will violate policies, and that will take advantage of kids like our son. And I remind my son, hey, look, you are a black boy. Okay, you understand that first. Society look at you differently when you're in a. So don't place yourself in a position where you have to be questioned or stopped. For example, loud music.
Right.
So he bought my car, and he loved playing his loud music. And I said, hey, don't draw attention to yourself. For the cops or police officers to stop you for a reason. The next thing you know, they want to actually, can I search your car?
Right.
So those kind of things I talk to them about, and at the same time too, respect the police.
In our conversation with Natasha Vessa, we talk about sex and the prevention of sex when it comes to student athletes and our youth. 10 years ago, this would have been a no-no to society. But as we all know, social media has made it a hot topic of discussion with our youth. In our conversation, she stressed the importance of prevention versus treatment and why it's beneficial to have this conversation early with your kids. I know it may be a little uncomfortable. You don't know how to start a conversation, but I guess, forcing that conversation will help your kid be more comfortable of bringing things to you. And I think if they're more comfortable talking to their parents about sex, then they won't be bringing it to their peers and getting the wrong information, getting misinformed. So we want to bring that information, bring this wealth of knowledge to you, how they approach your kids about sex.
So that script are sort of imprinted in your mind. You know how to behave in a certain way. Okay. So now when a child starts watching pornography, and the average age for a child to be exposed to pornography is 8. All right. When he's exposed to these horrible things of pornography at such a young age, what is his script saying to him? What is sex? So we want to have successful marriages or relationships in the future, but their understanding of sex are scripted by an environment of pornography and lust. And then we expect them to have a healthy relationship. I'm not sure if that's possible. I don't think it is possible. Right. And that is why we need to be truthful and give them a reason, not just for, everybody's doing it. Oh, it's awkward. Don't talk about it. We are actually exposing our kids to such dangerous things. We need to actively be aware of what they are busy with and make sure we protect them from these dangers. It's really dangerous for our young kids if they get exposed to pornography. So I find when I talk to teenagers, they don't even know what they want. They don't even know why they should not get pregnant or not have sex. Why shouldn't they if everybody's doing it? So if we don't give them a reason for their choices, okay, for not just saying no, they're going to do it anyway because we don't know what we're talking about. So it's very important to find a why, a reason. Because what's powerful with kids that's doing sport? What did they give up to be so successful? That guy that you just explained, 20,000 followers, what did that guy give up to be so successful?
Can you explain what are healthy sex choices and how can I help my child make them?
Okay. So, healthy sex choices is, it always starts with two things. When I start with my children, when I talk to them about sex, my first conversation is to define love, to understand the difference between love and lust. If they don't understand that, they're going to mistake lust for love. Okay. And that's where teenagers get distracted.
That's
in
13
lust.
years old. Those lusts is real heavy, Natasha. I'll tell you. At 13, those things are just jumping, but continue.
Yes, I know. I work with all these teenagers. And that's hard. So if they don't understand how to love themselves, they will not be able to make healthy decisions when they need to love somebody else. So we need to define love. So how I define love is when you a healthy person that loves himself will protect himself from anything that hinders himself to grow to full maturity and reach his full potential in life when it comes to love, relationships, their bodies, their beliefs, their values, and these spiritual beliefs. Sorry. So in those three areas, they need to protect themselves to make sure that they can grow to full maturity in all those areas. So it is, actually, I missed one. It's wisdom in knowledge. So if somebody's distracting you from doing your schoolwork, is that loving? So a relationshiply, if you need to lie to your parents to stay with this guy or girl or whatever, is that loving? If he endanger your body by getting an STD or a pregnancy, is that loving? All right. And then your values. If he makes you feel guilty or shamed for what you did or she did or whatever, whichever way around, okay? Is that loving?
In today's Time Out message, we got BJ Mackey.
Meet Melvin and Larry my freshman year. Melvin even tell you, and he might have already told you before.
We talked, but you don't say. I mean, it's like BJ. We always go at it. It wasn't never nothing like nothing like that.
We didn't really talk that much my freshman year.
Right.
You know, we talk occasionally and, out on the floor because Mel was just at a, this guy is trying to take my spot,
What you should be trying to do.
And Larry wanted to shoot. I wanted to shoot. All of us had our different egos. That's what people always don't understand, how hard it is to,
That's why I asked this question.
To manage and coach talented players.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see it in our play sometimes.
Sure, for sure. For sure. Now let's get back to the interview. In our collaboration with the NCAA, we put out a couple of different episodes to keep you informed. In most situations, we fail just because we don't have the knowledge or the understanding of what we're trying to do. In our 2 episodes, we explain the do's and don'ts of prospective collegiate athletes. Just an extra nugget of information can change your decision, can change your life for the better. If you don't have those nuggets, if you don't know what to do, you can be a high skilled, high educated athlete, but just don't know how what, when to do it, when to apply, that could be detrimental to your future. So gathering information and listen to podcasts like this about what you got to do as a freshman is very, very important when starting your collegiate career. Talking about amatism in sports, that's a tough issue, especially coming from different sports. Can you shed light on that, what that means, and how it differentiates between sports?
Yeah, so amateurism, when you get certified by the NCAA, you have the academic certification. That's kind of what we just went over. But then you have the amateurism component as well. And amateurism, all it's making sure is that a student athlete hasn't professionalized themselves and isn't accepting money to play sports. So it's a series of questions that will be asked when the student registers. They want to know what teams you've been on, have you signed any professional contracts, that kind of stuff. And I can go ahead and tell you that 94% of students that come through our certification process don't have any issue with amateur. It's a very small percentage. And a lot of those too are international. They're under a different system over there. Right. With basketball, it can be kind of murky. What's professional, what's not. Right. With some of the other sports as well. Just making sure that they're not accepting any money above actual necessary expenses for their participation in sports. So if you have an AAU team and they are traveling to Seattle from South Carolina, and there's travel, there's hotel, there's food, all of that stuff associated with that. That's actual and necessary expenses. Gotcha. Anything on top of that would be something that could potentially cause an amateurism issue. Something for students to be aware of as they're moving through.
So I'm a young Barrington Huntley in Georgia, listening to this right now, right? I'm an 8th grader or 9th grader. What should I do right now?
Right now, focus on your academics for sure. Academic success is going to lead to opportunities for you. I can tell you firsthand, just from my time working in compliance offices, talking to coaches about students and how they were recruiting them. If they had two students, they're both the same talent. Right. One has their academics in order and one is kind of shaky. They're always going to go towards the one that has the academics in order. I think it says something about the person themselves, and just handling that academic, being able to handle that says something about your dedication, says something about, what's in between the ears. That's something that's advice that I would give them. Make sure that the academics are good, and then really take ownership of your craft. If you say you're a basketball player, then you need to be in the gym, if you say you're a football player, then you need to be out in the field. These are, you kind of have to go in with both things in hand, just making sure that the academics are good. But then if this is something that you actually want to do, getting in contact with people that maybe have done it, listening to podcasts like this will be helpful for those students. So really taking care of the academics first, man, and then just focusing on honing your craft so that you can be a step ahead.
And good point. And I'm gonna just mention something that I heard the other day about going to the bank, right? You can't go to the bank and take no money out if you didn't put no money in. So as an athlete, you got to make deposits. Every day you make deposits, work ethic deposits. So in your senior year, you can cash out, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. In our conversation with Derek Coles, having great knowledge with representation gives you a different edge to the game, right? When you leave college athletics, there's another level that you have to consider, and that's the sports agency level. Having a well put together portfolio, yeah, that will increase your chance of being noticed. But having a well credited firm representing you is just as important as and effective. When you're trying to get that job overseas and you can't be over there, you don't have no communication, no relationships. You need an agency to kind of bridge that communication, bridge that gap in your contract, travel. All those things are very important. So having a well-credited agency to represent you is very, very important. In addition to that, I want you to talk to that person that's want to become in that position. What are some things they got to do? What are the things they got to look towards, and just help fulfilling that dream? So I'll give you the floor. Help me frame that.
So basically my exact title at the national office is I'm assistant director for development in the enforcement department. And with that, my role had three different components. I work with football development, basketball development, as well as the agent certification process. And so I'm trying to break down each three. So the first thing is the agent certification. So in that role, I basically have an opportunity to certify NBA agents to help student athletes in college test the waters. Test the waters basically is saying, hey, I want to put my name out there to get evaluation from the NBA, but also want to get opportunity to declare for the draft. And declare by the draft, I can go to the combine, get workouts, and get evaluation. And after the evaluation, if I want to, I can come back to school and still not lose my eligibility. And so to do that, you have to sign with one of our NCAA certified agents who go through a process and a system to be certified to help these kids navigate this test the waters process. And so this is year 2 of that program, and I've seen a lot of success. And I tell kids in that space, I encourage kids to go through it because you're going through it just like the rest of the guys are. The kid, I think we had 60, 65, 70 kids, right? That, most likely may come back to school, but they're not Jalen Suggs. We know Jalen Suggs is staying in it, but you can go through the same system and process as him, but they come back to school and get the information that you need to say, okay, I talked to 18 school teams. This is what I need to work on. So I come back to college and become better. And now I maximize my stock and increase my draft stock for next year. Because this year I got a grade of going late second round. I'm gonna work on what I need to this summertime, get ready to game. And next year I possibly be a first round pick. The prime example is Jared Butler. He tested the waters last year. And then, he became National Player of the Year, won a national championship. And I think he's definitely a first round pick this year versus last year. Most likely he was a second round guy. So that's the agent space, right? And then with football development and basketball development. Football development, I work with 2 different conferences. I work with the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, and the ACC. And so from that standpoint, I'm more of this is open ears. I'm out there talking to the coaches in the football space about any type of concerns or issues they're having that they're seeing within recruiting, what they're seeing within the sport itself. And I bring that information back to the national office.
So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. We keep dropping major hits. We are grateful to have guests come on and offer their time and knowledge to what we're trying to do in educating student athletes. Most of these interviews in this last episode was very short stints of information. To check out the full interview, please go to our website at jamelpresident.com, or you can check it out on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as well. Coming up next in our last episode for the season is titled Me Versus Me, where I'll be interviewing myself, talking about different topics and things that I think that need to be addressed, things that we'll be talking about in the upcoming season 2 of Triple Threat. So just want to touch base on things, what to expect coming up in our upcoming season. It's been a wonderful joy to talk to tons of people and getting their feedback on what athletes need to do, what they shouldn't do, things of that sort. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful time, and I really enjoy it. And I thank you guys for tuning in and following us and listening to us as well. All right. Our next episode coming up, me versus me. Be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the Day Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President, and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.
York City.